and you have gotten to yourself into a place linguistically. I'm not sure if that's a word, but you've gotten yourself to a place where you can have conversations with people around the world.
I wouldn't say around the world, but in different places.
Would you say you're fluent in any language?
English, definitely, for sure.
All right, what's your next best language?
Probably Hindi.
Hindi. Oh, wow. Okay, Hindi. And why did you have to learn that?
I was in India for 2.5 years, and mostly in places that people didn't speak really great English.
Okay.
Especially when I first got there, I was in a place where very few people spoke English.
Okay.
So it was kind of necessity, and I was immersed in it and enjoyed learning it. So many reasons.
What, for someone who is interested in learning a language, what's the process you take in order to learn? What would be a simple?
First, to know why you're doing it.
Okay.
So motivation. I heard a quote the other day, like, motivation is directly linked to your competence. So to whatever extent you're motivated, that impacts, how good you can get at the thing you're doing.
Wow.
So for me, it was always practical to learn the language, sometimes even professional. I'd have to use it for my job. And I find it fun and
which also adds to the motivation aspect of it.
exactly. It's something I'm drawn to.
Right.
It's something I'm pulled towards.
Right. Okay.
It's something that excites me. And I'm going to start learning French in 2 weeks. And I've been holding back
Okay.
Patiently, because there's like an excitement in me to start the learning process. But I'm waiting until I'm in the context where it'll be practical, so I can really start and throw myself in.
Okay. So the motivation to do so needs to be there. What's the initial practical step to take?
Research. For me, it's research. Learning about the language. So just reading about French, for example. What is it about French that is important? Some languages have different characters. Some languages have different sets of vocabulary or grammatical structures. So reading a bit about the language, maybe its history, learning about it, for me is good. And then doing research on what are the best apps, what are the best YouTube series, what are the best podcasts that can support me. And then I like to download all of that and then start to toggle around and play with it and find my unique learning journey. It could be a mix of podcasts, YouTube series, apps. So in each language it's different, but I find picking up a lot of vocabulary in the beginning is a good step. And then also speaking it. So once you learn something, use it. Use it or lose it. That kind of thing.
I would have to think that the initial time using the language can be a little bit intimidating, right? You gotta cross that threshold to where you're now going to apply what you learned on the spot with someone who is listening to you and maybe judging the way you deliver that. But then once you cross the threshold, you start having conversations, and that's when you really pick it up.
It's both. You're picking it up the whole time.
The whole time.
And you can't fake it.
You can't, right.
Even if you're super confident.
Yeah.
When you go to use it, if you don't know it, you don't know it. So it requires a level of humility and telling people, showing people where you're at, and then still pushing forward even though you're not perfect.
Yeah. So, I guess if someone were to speak to us in English and try and fake it, how well they know the language, you would know within a matter of a couple words.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's the same for everything.
Right.
But some things are easier to fake and hide. Other things are not as easy.
Yeah.
And this is
language is right out.
Like,
right
I'm tough. You can fake being tough.
For sure.
But then when the fight comes, how tough are you?
Yeah.
But fights don't always happen, so it's not, you can get away with pretending to be tough for a while.
Right. So that's interesting. Language is, you're on the spot. There's no hiding it. You're going to have to eventually communicate it or not.
Right.
And so I guess what you're trying to do in the beginning is just find your way around, right? You're trying to find your way around the culture, the people, the language, literally geographically where you're going.
Right.
And then are people open to teaching you in your experience teaching you the language?
Often kids, it's a great way to connect with kids. It's a great way to connect with people in general in a new place.
Yeah.
Because I'm a grown man and I show up talking like a 4-year-old. So that's just often endearing. Like, oh, look at this sweet grown man that can't really say a sentence. So it's a way that people, can relate to you. That's beyond identity, beyond, this person is this profession or that profession. It's like starting fresh.
You mentioned kids. I bet the kids are pretty fired up when they're like, I can teach a grown man something. Right. I am smarter than this grown man in front of me. But that's a good way. I've always found that asking kids questions gives them a little bit of empowerment. So when I was coaching, I wouldn't, I would coach them in a position, but if they knew something more than I did in a certain topic or culture, rap or basketball, ask them, get them to answer. Then they're like, oh, coach is interested in what I have to say. I'm teaching him something. That furthers the relationship.